I stood there in the bright Colorado sun, gazing at the vacant area where our car had been just 10 minutes ago. My wife, Chloe, and her pals, Hila, Stephanie, and Lauren, had vanished. At first, I figured it was one of their foolish pranks. They were always doing something like this, pushing limits, testing how much I'd take before I snapped. 5 years of marriage, and I'd gotten used to their little games, the way they'd laugh at me, the way Chloe would join in instead of standing up for me. But this seemed different. My phone was still connected to the vehicle charger. My wallet was stowed in the glove box. All I had was the faded t-shirt and trousers I was wearing, and a rising pit in my stomach. Minutes passed. We'd been on this road trip to Stephanie's lake property for 3 days now, and I'd been miserable the whole time. Chloe had asked me to come, said it'd be an opportunity to bond with her team. I wasn't big on the idea. Her pals constantly regarded me like an outsider, tossing off jabs and inside jokes I wasn't part of. But I went regardless, because I loved her, or at least I thought I did. The gas station was in the middle of nowhere, just a dusty small stop off the highway with a flickering sign and a single pump. I'd gone inside to use the restroom, believing they'd wait. They always waited, except this time they didn't. An hour passed. I paced the rough pavement, kicking pebbles, telling myself they'd come back any second, tires crunching gravel, Chloe's voice calling out, "Gotcha!" But the road stayed silent. 2 hours in, perspiration was streaming down my neck, my throat dry. I kept replaying the last few days in my head, the way Stephanie smirked when she accidentally dropped coffee on my lap, how Lauren muttered something to Chloe that made her giggle while glancing at me, how Hila simply watched, that smug little grin on her face. I should have seen it coming. They'd been building up to something, and I'd been too foolish to notice. A vehicle drew up, its engine rumbling loud enough to knock me out of my thoughts. The driver, a huge guy with a gray beard and a tattered ball cap, leaned out the window. "You okay, buddy? Been standing there a while?" His voice was hard but compassionate, and it hit me like a punch. I wasn't okay. They weren't coming back. Chloe wasn't coming back. I gulped hard, trying to keep my voice straight. "Yeah. My ride left me. Think you could help?" He nodded like it wasn't the first time he'd seen someone stranded out here. "Get in. Where you headed?" I didn't even know. Home? Back to Chloe? The life we made? Yet as I hopped into the cab, something shifted inside me. 5 years of her laughing at me, blowing me off, letting her friends treat me like garbage, it all came pouring up, hot and heavy. I gazed out the window as the gas station shrank in the side mirror. The driver didn't ask too many questions. Just kept driving, humming some old country song. My hands clenched into fists on my lap. I could have borrowed his phone, called Chloe, demanded answers, but what would she say? It was a joke, sweetheart. Don't be so sensitive. I'd heard it all before. Every time I complained about her pals, she'd roll her eyes. Tell me I didn't appreciate their humor. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I never would. Yet standing there alone, abandoned like some stray dog, I realized something. They didn't get me either. And Chloe, she'd picked them over me. Again and again. The trucker let me off at a junction, instructing me toward Grand Junction, the nearest town. "Good luck, man," he said, raising his cap. I nodded, my throat stiff, and started walking. My shoes scraped the dirt, the sun pounding down on my head. No phone, no money, no plan. Just me and the open road. Half of me wanted to turn back, to plead with someone at the gas station to call her, to fix this, but another part, a louder part, kept pushing me ahead. I was done being the punchline, done being the guy they laughed at. Chloe and her friends believed they'd won, thought they had me. But as I walked into Grand Junction, a weird peace fell over me. They hadn't broken me, they'd set me free. who'd nod at me or drop a couple of coins on the table, and it felt wonderful, like I was part of something. My hands were calloused now, my arms stronger from carrying containers and washing pots. I'd glimpse my reflection in the diner's glass door sometimes, tired eyes, tangled hair. But a guy who was making it one day at a time. Chloe's tweet disappeared from my memory, replaced by the clatter of plates and Jacqueline's gruff voice, yelling out orders. I stopped following her social media after that. Didn't need to. Whatever she was saying, whatever tale she was constructing, it didn't matter. I had my studio, my job, my life. Little, yes, but growing. The loneliness still came around, especially on quiet nights when the laundromat downstairs buzzed and rattled, although it wasn't as harsh anymore. I'd wake up to the fragrance of detergent drifting through the floorboards, pull on my boots and head out into the cold morning air. No one was ready to mock me. No one was rolling their eyes at my every statement. I could just be Mike, plain, uncomplicated Mike. And that was enough. For the first time in years, I felt like I was standing on solid ground, not sinking in quicksand. Freedom wasn't noisy or flashy. It was this, my key, my paycheck, my choice. And I wasn't giving it back. I had lived above the laundromat for a long time now, settled into a routine that felt like mine. Work at the cafe, save my cash, sleep in my own space. The days blended together, but they were lovely days, steady ones. Then she stepped in. Sienna. She started coming to Jacqueline's diner twice a week, usually sitting in the same booth near the window, always with a stack of textbooks and a pen in her hand. She was a med student. I concluded that, by the way she'd whisper medical terms under her breath while jotting notes. Her order never changed. Denver omelet, no tomatoes, extra coffee, and she'd barely glance up when I brought it over. I'd watch her sometimes, fascinated at how she'd get so engrossed in her research that her fork would hover halfway to her mouth for a whole minute. Before she noticed, I don't know why I started fooling with her. Maybe I was bored. Maybe I just wanted to see if she'd crack a smile. I'd switch out my name tag with random names I made up, Bob one day, Steve the next, Carl after that, just to see if she'd catch it. She didn't. At first, too buried in her books. But one morning, I walked over with Rusty pinned to my shirt, and she finally looked up. Her eyes narrowed, moving to the tag, then back to my face. "Your name tag is wrong," she remarked, her voice calm yet strong, like she was diagnosing me. I smirked, caught off guard. "Is it?" I shot back. It was, but she had never asked what my real name was. She smirked, just a little, and went back to her notes. That was it. Our first true moment. And it stuck with me. Work kept me busy, but Sienna became the highlight of my week. She'd show up, order her usual, and I'd find excuses to swing by her table, refill her coffee, clear her plate, ask if she needed anything. She'd nod or mumble a thanks, but that smirk lingered in my thoughts, like a challenge. One day she arrived looking frazzled. Her hair was disheveled, her books heavier than usual. "Tough night?" I asked, placing her coffee down. She groaned, rubbing her eyes. "Exams. I haven't slept in 2 days." I nodded, not pushing it. But when she wasn't looking, I placed an extra hash brown on her plate. She saw, glanced up at me. "You're sneaky," she muttered. I just shrugged. "Gotta keep you awake somehow." Our first date wasn't even planned. She came in one evening, all suited up, trousers, a gray blouse, not her usual sweater, and she informed me her friends had bailed on a reservation at some nice pizza place across town. "I'm not wasting." "It," she muttered, half to herself, then glanced at me. "You free?" I was wiping down the counter, my shift almost finished.